sector, we need to work out how we control emissions of plastics and the use of plastics and what people can or can't do with them. Because actually, it's not just the beach and the ocean which have brought this to life. It's every single part of our lives. You go into the street, you go onto your country field, they're all inundated with plastics. And the furthest flung parts of the world are suffocating in plastic, and that's not good enough. It's a moral outrage. There's people who will never have even consumed anything from in plastic, who will have tides bringing in our fast food waste onto their beaches, affecting their livelihoods, affecting their fish stocks, affecting their natural resources that they need to conserve for the future. And so that is not fair. That's as unfair as climate change from emissions in the Western world affecting, developing countries.
So is this something that's got to be tackled, I suppose, from so many different levels? I know you as you say, you've got to stop it from reaching the sea in the first place, and that starts, I suppose, on people's high street. What the decisions they make, and going into shops and making those small but significant commitments. And
it's an interesting one. You're right. We always describe it as a toolkit. Some of the big corporations might try and turn it into a litter problem and try and sort of aggregate it all together and say, look, we can't focus on bottle deposits or bag bans or charges because, litter's a much bigger thing than that. And I said, no, that's not the right approach, because with climate change, you don't go, we won't insulate houses or have lower emissions engines because that won't solve it in itself. You say they're tools within the toolkit to fight climate change. So you need all sorts of tools. You need sharp ones, you need blunter ones, you need softer ones, you need different ones, like in any toolkit, that can help project this plastic-free future. So we need to educate people, of course. We need to change consumer habits, of course. We need to change industry and manufacture behaviour as much as we need to change consumer behaviour. And we need to make sure government puts the right framework and incentives in place to get manufacturers to change. If we don't do that, we won't, if we don't combine it all, we won't succeed at this. So it's not one sector that needs to act without another. And what we would say on that is ultimately this is not a litter issue. It's not a littering issue. It's not about dirty people and communities chucking stuff everywhere. That does happen, and they should not do that. And there are more penalties coming into force because of that. But this is a systems failure. We are producing too much stuff too fast without the systems to capture it. So, some people I talk to, some sort of older stakeholders around SS will say to us, back in my day, we never had this litter problem. And I say, back in your day, you didn't have Costa Coffee, Starbucks, McDonald's, Pret a Manger and everything pumping this out onto the street. You probably sat down for lunch and had a cup of tea in a mug. Yeah. And so the whole thing has changed. Yeah. And whereas all of this single-use plastic has proliferated, the bin on your high street has remained pretty much the same. It hasn't changed. The facilities for you to be able to control it haven't really changed. Yeah. And so we haven't seen the acceleration in the mechanisms to capture, reprocess, sort, recycle all of this stuff in the right way, or indeed the incentives for manufacturers not to use single-use plastics, the right taxes at the right place, not necessarily passed on or not at all passed on to the taxpayer, but passed on or to the public, but actually put there in place to stop manufacturers from actually using certain things in the first place. Because, of course, it should be their responsibility to create products that can either be really recycled very easily, that can be much less damaging to the environment, but still do their job. And the right incentives can be put in place for that. So it's very important, particularly at a time that the Treasury is just about to consult on single-use plastics tax. Yeah. It's one question. Lots of people will go, the 5 pence plastic bag charge, that worked. And it has worked, it's very good. But it doesn't mean that will work on all single-use plastics. It doesn't mean that if you put 5 pence on a fork and a knife in a restaurant that you'll have the same effect with that. And we've got to be very careful at what taxes go in and where they're directed and whether they'll actually reduce the plastic consumption and consumers, or whether they'll just add a cost onto people's experience that they're actually happy to absorb. Because if you're paying £5 for a box of food somewhere and they say, here's 10p on a knife and fork so you can eat it, most people may well do that. Yeah. So actually we've got to be careful, and it's important that manufacturers change even more than consumers. So that's where really we should be looking at this. Plastic reduction, and that should come through incentives or disincentives to manufacturers. Yeah. You know, Boyan is an amazing individual. He has captured, you know, long before many people, the world's imagination about taking out the plastic pollution from the ocean. There are, of course, question marks over whether that will or won't work, and that's fine. There's question marks about any mechanism, and I'm sure there's people who would question.
So that's an entry point to teach kids about gyres and things like that, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so we celebrate that. So I absolutely agree. And we've got some great schools programs. We've got our plastic-free schools program. So we've got, you know, a team of people who will go into schools, our regional reps, some of my team from the head office, you know, to talk about plastic pollution and wider issues. We've got another campaign called Be the Change. So we've got 2 or 3 schools programs that are wildly successful that we take out there. I would say that kids, I think my team and my reps are better at talking in the school context than myself. I tend to talk in other areas with different sort of stakeholders in a better way.
No, sure. Will you have that all parliamentary group, don't you, in Westminster? And
yeah, well, I do a lot of work in Westminster. Of course, it's a great place to try and, you know, have influence. So we see a lot of government, you know, ministers and MPs and a lot of civil servants to discuss what the opportunities to create new legislation are to control plastics and other things. Still, we're working on water quality very hard, on climate change, on marine protected areas, so various areas. But we've got the only marine conservation focused APPG, an all-party parliamentary group in Westminster. It's chaired by our Cornish MP Steve Double, who's very passionate and committed around plastic pollution at the moment. He's been very helpful in many ways. And that group is quite unique. We do some very good events in Parliament, and it's not really about SAS being on a soapbox. We've created a forum where we're bringing together lots of different charities and business leaders and media leaders and campaigners to talk about the issues that need to be talked about and resolved. So it's not about us, it's about the issue. And so we're very pleased to invest our sort of core funding to make sure that happens in a really powerful way. And we've worked, you know, the last event we had Greenpeace there, we had Zoological Society of London there, Campaign to Protect Rural England, Keep Britain Tidy, MCS, you name it, we bring them in because this is about working together. NGOs, government, business, and everyone going, how do we actually solve this? And of course, at times, we have to have a critical voice too, and we will criticise any party. You know, we're not. You know, we as a charity, we can't be party political, but we can be very political. And where we need to criticise and say government or opposition must do better, we do that through the group too.
Yeah, it's interesting. I interviewed Will Travers of the Born Free Foundation the other day, and Will was saying it's actually quite interesting how the world is changing so quickly, in the sense that you know, China has gone from zero to hero in a sense, because, you know, they're announcing. On one hand, they're announcing, you know, the ivory ban, but they've also, of course, stopped importing the plastics from the UK, haven't they? So it has really sort of.
Well, I mean, you know, China has filled a vacuum that the United States has easily sort of, you know, created. You know, sadly for them, in that, you know, China, you know, despite, you know, some of the challenges of their own manufacturing and emissions and things, you know, they're showing leadership on solar energy. I hear from one of my environmental colleagues at the Eden Project that China planted more trees last year than every other country in the world combined. So you see them going, actually, we want to create a sustainable future. We need to be thinking about post-oil, you know, society. We need to be thinking about our natural resources, and so I think that they are, you know, starting to plan away from the current model in a good way, and that's a good thing. And, you know, not accepting our imports is a great thing, because that's going to force the domestic recycling investment, and something like deposit returns can help do that too. Let's create green jobs. Recycled plastic emits less carbon, good for our carbon budget. It creates, you know, the circular economy in our country. It means that there's less air miles to any piece of plastic that's produced, or travel miles to it. So, you know, we're our hand may be forced a bit on that, but actually it's a really positive thing. And we do outsource a lot of our pollution, these Western countries, not just the UK, you know, and whether it's carbon or plastic, it's the same principle. We're saying, look, we're all fine here, but let's ship it off. And then the irony of that is often some of the less, I would say, savoury studies can say, oh, plastic pollution isn't a UK thing or an American thing. It's all coming from these places in Southeast Asia and developing countries, and it's all their fault. And that's because we're chucking all of our stuff at them, and they can't manage it all. They haven't got the waste and recycling facilities to do it. They don't really want it. We're sending them really dirty recyclate. It's not got any value. And of course, that's a recipe for disaster. So this is really about responsibility and a fully sort of accountable sort of budget on plastic, carbon, and any other pollutant.
Yeah. I read somewhere that you were an Arsenal supporter. Have you had any luck sort of taking aside Mr. Wenger and, you know, I was thinking
I'd love my son Darwin is a big Arsenal supporter too, and I actually train his football team, the Truro Tiger Sharks. There's lots of plastic problems around sport, and particularly in sports stadia. I did a talk a couple of years back with the British Association for Sustainability in Sport, which is run by a guy called Russell, I forget his surname, who's head of sustainability at the Lord's Cricket Ground. And it's great to see sports coming on board. You know, whether you're at your local five-a-side football pitch on a Wednesday night in the Docklands and you look in the bin, or whether you're at, you know, the Emirates Stadium, what you'll probably see in that bin is lots of really pure recyclate that could be used again really easily. And that's an irony for me, because if you went out and harvested all of the bins in your city centre, you'd find really, really pure recyclate that can be very easily recreated into a new bottle or a new good high quality product. And whilst everyone is going out to harvest the ocean of very dirty, complicated plastics that's very degraded, why aren't we just looking inland to these systems that are there? They're ready made. They're within yards of where these people are having these ideas. They're actually filled with very pure stuff that if you found it in the ocean, you'd be delighted, because it would be really easy for you to process. And so there's a bizarre sort of outsourcing till the end of this process, when actually really what we need to be thinking is how, where do we trap it sooner? And so actually, I was at my football training earlier in the week, and one of the bins was just filled with just plastic bottles. I mean, they are bottles that could make new bottles straight away, because they're also clean and pure. If they get sand all over them and sit in the ocean for a year, maybe not.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
This is all good, and I hope that captured everything you wanted.
It was brilliant, Hugo. You're fantastic. I saw you speak at the Royal Geographical Society.
Okay.
And I thought I've got it.